and for all what is acceptable for you and what is not. And you must decide it with the weight of seriousness, as though your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. If you allow yourself to bend, to wiggle, to compromise on the rules you set, then you invite chaos into your own life. You'll notice that the people who succeed in anything, whether it's health, business, or even character, live by principles that they simply will not break. They don't negotiate with themselves about whether to get up on time, whether to do the work, whether to keep pushing forward. It's settled. The decision is made once, and then every day afterward, the standard carries the burden of choice for them. The problem for many people is they leave too much room for negotiation. They tell themselves, I'll try to eat healthy, or I'll try to wake up earlier. But try is a word that builds failure into its foundation. It leaves the back door open for excuses. Standards don't use the word try. Standards declare, this is who I am, this is what I do, and nothing less is acceptable. And when you live like that, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to know deep down that your word has weight, that when you say you will do something, you can rely on yourself to follow through. That trust in yourself is the very essence of discipline. Of course, setting standards is not easy because it means drawing lines that cut into comfort. It means you cannot indulge every desire or whim that comes to you. It means you'll have to say no to things that feel good in the short term but destroy you in the long term. And that is precisely why standards must be non-negotiable. If they are negotiable, the moment temptation appears, you'll talk yourself out of them. You'll rationalize your way into failure. But when you say, this is the law of my life, you remove the option of surrender. You don't debate with yourself. You don't hold a committee meeting with your emotions. You simply obey the standard. Think of it like a soldier following orders. The soldier doesn't wake up and ask, do I feel like obeying today? No. There's a code of duty, a structure that demands obedience, and that structure produces discipline. When you live by your own higher code, you take on that same role in your own life. You become both the commander and the soldier. You issue the order through your standards, and then you carry them out without hesitation, without compromise. That's how you forge discipline from the inside out. It's not enough to say, I want to be disciplined. You must concretely define what that means for you. Does it mean waking up at 6:00 a.m. every single day? Then write it down and treat it as law. Does it mean no junk food, no excuses, no rationalizations? Then carve that standard into your daily life so firmly that it cannot be erased. Does it mean working toward your goals for a set number of hours each day, no matter how uninspired you feel? Then make that your non-negotiable. Without definition, discipline becomes a vague wish. With definition, it becomes a reality. And here's the truth: life itself will test whether your standards are serious or not. Comfort will try to seduce you. Fear will try to paralyze you. Distractions will pull at you from every direction. The world will ask, are you really committed or are you pretending? And in those moments, only the strength of your standards will decide the outcome. If your rules are flimsy, you'll fold. But if they're set in stone, then you'll stand, and you'll discover that you're capable of far more than you imagined. The beginning of discipline, then, is not action. It is decision. It's the decision to write your own code of conduct and to refuse compromise at all costs. Without that, you'll always drift, always bend, always excuse yourself. But with it, you become unshakable. And once you become unshakable, you can build a life that others admire, but few can replicate. So decide today, draw the line, set the standard. And once you do, never under any circumstance negotiate with yourself again. That is the first and most powerful step in forcing yourself to be disciplined. Most people make the mistake of believing that discipline depends on motivation. They wait for the perfect feeling, the rush of inspiration, the spark that makes them want to take action. And when that spark isn't there, they retreat into excuses, telling themselves, I just don't feel it today. That's why so many lives are left half-lived, so many dreams are abandoned before they've even taken shape, because motivation is unreliable. It's like the weather. Some days it's clear, some days it storms, and if you only move when the sky is clear, you'll spend most of your life standing still. Discipline demands something greater. It demands that you detach your actions from the instability of emotion. You must be able to act even when you feel nothing, to rise when you're exhausted, to keep moving when you're uninspired. to continue pushing when your whole body and mind scream at you to stop. This is where discipline proves itself to be the ultimate weapon, because it does not rely on how you feel in the moment. It's rooted in decision, in structure, in the promise you've made to yourself. Think about this. The people who achieve extraordinary things in life are not the ones who always feel motivated. They are the ones who do what must be done, whether or not they feel like it. A world-class athlete doesn't train every day because they wake up inspired. They train because it is non-negotiable. A successful writer doesn't only sit down to write when the muse arrives. They sit down every day, whether their mind is on fire with ideas or completely blank. What separates the disciplined from the undisciplined is the ability to override emotion with duty. This doesn't mean that emotions don't matter at all. Of course, they influence you. But they must not control you. If you are a slave to how you feel, then you will always choose the path of least resistance. Because feelings seek comfort, feelings crave ease, feelings whisper to you to stay in bed, to delay the work, to give in just this once. And if you obey those whispers, you slowly weaken your will. But if you resist them, if you act in spite of them, you grow stronger. Each time you choose action over emotion, you reinforce the truth that discipline is greater than mood. Detaching from motivation also forces you to redefine what success means in your daily life. Success is no longer about whether you feel good about your progress. It becomes about whether you showed up, whether you honored your commitment, whether you acted in alignment with your standards. On some days, you will feel powerful and productive, and on other days, you'll feel like you're crawling forward through mud. But it doesn't matter, because in both cases, the work gets done. And that consistency compounds into results far beyond anything fleeting motivation could ever achieve. It's important to understand that the discipline you practice when you don't feel like it carries more weight than the discipline you practice when you do. Anyone can follow through when they're excited, when energy is high, when the path feels effortless. But when everything in you resists and you still follow through, that's when you're building the kind of resilience that separates the average from the exceptional. That's when you forge a character that is immovable. There will be days when the last thing you want to do is face your responsibilities. You'll feel tired, discouraged, empty. But if you let those emotions govern you, you'll never break past your current limitations. The truth is, most breakthroughs happen right after the moment when you most want to quit. You force yourself to move forward when you're drained, and suddenly you discover strength you didn't know existed. That discovery never comes to those who only act when they feel like it. So, what must you do? You must decide to live as if motivation doesn't exist. You must construct your life around action, not feeling. The question is never, do I want to? The question is always, will I honor my standard? And if the answer is yes, then you do it, whether your emotions scream against it or not. That shift in mindset is where discipline truly begins to take root. Detach your discipline from motivation and from emotion, and you will find yourself becoming something unshakable. You'll no longer depend on circumstances or moods to carry you forward. You'll have built a foundation of action that nothing can topple. And once you've reached that point, nothing, no setback, no doubt, no fleeting feeling can stand in the way of what you've committed yourself to becoming. That is the essence of discipline, and it is the only path to greatness. One of the greatest illusions people hold is that freedom comes from doing whatever you want, whenever you want. It sounds attractive, but it's a lie. That kind of so-called freedom is nothing but chaos. If every day is left unstructured, if every moment is left to impulse, you'll find yourself wasting time, wasting energy, and sinking into a life of disorder. You might feel free, but underneath you're enslaved to distraction, to laziness, to the pull of whatever is easiest in the moment. True freedom doesn't come from the absence of rules, it comes from the presence of structure. Discipline requires a framework, and that framework is built out of routine. When you create structure for your life, you reduce the number of meaningless decisions that drain your energy. Every choice you make has a cost. If you spend your day deciding when to wake up, when to eat, when to work, and when to rest, you deplete your willpower before you've even begun to tackle the things that truly matter. But when you live within a routine, those choices are already made for you. You wake up because it's time to wake up. You work because it's time to work. You rest because it's time to rest. In that rhythm, your energy is preserved, your focus sharpened, and your willpower strengthened for the battles that actually count. Consider the way great performers, leaders, or thinkers live. Their lives are marked by ritual and order. They eat at the same times, they train at the same times, they practice at the same times. They don't reinvent the day from scratch every morning. They've constructed patterns that carry them forward even when their motivation is absent. That's why they appear unshakable, because their days are built on rails, and those rails keep them moving in the direction of their goals. The resistance most people feel toward routine comes from a misunderstanding. They think structure is a prison. They imagine it will suffocate their creativity or their joy. But the opposite is true. Structure is not a prison, it's a foundation. It's the framework that allows you to rise higher. A musician doesn't become free by ignoring rhythm and form. He becomes free by mastering them. An athlete doesn't become free by ignoring the discipline of training. He becomes free because that discipline gives him the ability to perform at the highest level. Your life works the same way. Structure liberates you from chaos, and in that liberation, you gain the freedom to pursue what actually matters. What's important is that your structure reflects the person you want to become. If you want to be strong, your daily routine must include training, even when it's inconvenient. If you want to build a business, your structure must dedicate time to creation, to strategy, to persistence. If you want to grow spiritually or intellectually, your routine must carve out space for reflection, reading, and learning. It's not complicated, but it is difficult. Because the moment you put structure in place, you declare war on your own laziness and your own excuses. And that war is uncomfortable, but it is precisely through that discomfort that transformation occurs. Think about the chaos of an undisciplined day. You wake up late, already behind. You skip the things you know you should do because you're rushing. The day slips away in distractions, and by nightfall you're frustrated with yourself, promising to do better tomorrow. But tomorrow looks exactly the same because there's no structure in place to hold you accountable. Now, compare that with a day built on routine. You rise at the same time every morning. You know exactly what to do first, and then next, and then next. Even when your mind resists, the structure carries you. The day is not left to chance, it is already ordered. Which of those days will shape you into someone strong, someone disciplined, someone capable of handling the weight of life? The answer is obvious. Of course, you won't build the perfect routine overnight. It requires experimentation, refinement, and persistence. You'll stumble, you'll adjust, but the key is to keep building. Over time, your structure becomes second nature, and what once felt difficult begins to feel natural. That is the power of routine. It takes what is hard and makes it automatic. And when discipline becomes automatic, you no longer waste energy battling yourself. You simply live in alignment with your standards. If you want to force yourself into discipline, you must harness the power of structure and routine. Without them, you'll drift endlessly, tossed around by moods and distractions. With them, you'll stand firm, anchored in order, moving forward with clarity and strength. Do not fear structure, embrace it, because when your life is built on routine, you become unstoppable, and no chaos in the world can pull you off the path you've chosen. That is where discipline is forged, and that is where greatness is born. Discipline is rarely built in comfort. Comfort lulls you into mediocrity, it softens your edges, and it convinces you that you have more time than you really do. Left alone, without challenge, without resistance, you will naturally drift toward ease. That's why so many people stay stuck where they are. They've built lives that shield them from pressure instead of exposing them to it. But if you want to force yourself to be disciplined, you must learn to use pressure as fuel. You must step into environments that demand something greater from you, because without that demand, your potential lies dormant, wasted. There's something about being held accountable that changes the way you act. If you know no one is watching, it's easy to cheat yourself. You skip the workout, you delay the project, you lie to yourself about how hard you're working. But the moment you add accountability, whether it's a coach, a mentor, a partner, or even just a written commitment, you raise the stakes. Suddenly, it's not just about disappointing yourself, it's about failing to uphold a promise. And that weight creates pressure. That pressure sharpens you. It forces you to rise to a standard you might not have reached on your own. Think of how deadlines work. A task without a deadline can float around for weeks, months, even years. But add a date, add the expectation that something must be finished by a certain time, and you feel the weight of urgency. Suddenly, your focus intensifies, and your mind finds a way to make it happen. The pressure compels action. That's why some of the best work people ever produce is done under deadlines, because pressure squeezes out potential that comfort keeps hidden. This is why you must deliberately create accountability in your life. Don't wait for someone to force it on you. Set public goals, share your commitments, put yourself in situations where failure is visible. It might feel uncomfortable, even terrifying, but that discomfort is exactly what you need. It's easy to lower your standards when no one else knows about them. But once your standards are out in the open, once they're spoken and seen, the pressure to honor them increases dramatically. And it is that pressure that will help you move forward when your emotions try to drag you back. Accountability doesn't always have to come from other people. You can hold yourself accountable by designing systems that punish laziness and reward persistence. For example, create consequences for breaking your own rules. If you miss a workout, donate money to it because you disagree with. If you waste time scrolling when you should be working, cut out an hour of entertainment that evening. These self-imposed penalties create stakes, and when there are stakes, discipline grows stronger. The same principle applies in positive ways. When you meet your standard, when you keep your commitment, reward yourself with something meaningful. In doing so, you build an association in your mind. Discipline equals reward, laziness equals loss. Over time, that structure reinforces the very behaviors you're trying to cultivate. You've transformed accountability into a constant fuel source for growth. Pressure also comes from putting yourself in challenging environments. If you surround yourself with people who are complacent, you'll feel no urgency to push harder. But if you place yourself among the disciplined, the focused, the driven, their standards will expose your weakness and demand more from you. It will sting at first. You'll feel inadequate, like you're lagging behind. But that sting is precisely the pressure you need. Instead of shrinking away from it, lean into it, use it. Let it remind you of who you could become if you refuse to settle. There is a paradox here, the very thing most people run from. Pressure, responsibility, accountability, is the thing that actually sets them free. Because once you embrace pressure, you no longer fear it. Once you seek accountability, you stop hiding from yourself. And once you learn to live under high standards, discipline becomes a natural result. You stop drifting. You stop negotiating with yourself. You rise to meet the weight placed on your shoulders. And in doing so, you discover that you were capable of far more than you ever thought possible. So do not run from pressure. Invite it. Do not avoid accountability. Demand it. Build structures that force you into action. Surround yourself with people who won't let you slide, and create stakes that make quitting too costly. Because when you use pressure and accountability as fuel, you transform weakness into strength, hesitation into action, and discipline into an unshakable force that drives you forward no matter what stands in your way. That is how you rise. Discipline is not forged in grand moments of glory. It's not born from a single heroic act that changes everything overnight. Discipline is built in the small, quiet sacrifices that nobody sees, the ones that accumulate day after day, shaping you into someone stronger, tougher, and more resilient than you were yesterday. The truth is, the big victories people admire are almost always the result of countless small sacrifices made consistently over time. If you want to become disciplined, you have to start by embracing those small sacrifices, even when they seem insignificant, because they are the very building blocks of inner strength. If every time you choose to do the harder thing when the easier option is right in front of you, you're training your will. Think about something as simple as getting out of bed the moment your alarm rings. It's not about the act of waking up. It's about proving to yourself that you can master that moment of resistance. When you push aside the urge to stay comfortable and choose discomfort, instead you teach yourself a lesson: you are in control, not your impulses. Over time, those little victories stack up and form an unshakable foundation. Most people underestimate the power of these small decisions. They believe discipline is only about the big sacrifices, working endless hours, running marathons, climbing mountains. But those achievements don't come out of nowhere. They're the result of thousands of micro decisions, skipping the junk food, doing one more set at the gym, finishing the task instead of procrastinating, saying no to distractions. Each sacrifice may seem trivial on its own, but together they forge a character capable of enduring the weight of much greater challenges. And here's the paradox. While small sacrifices may feel like losses in the moment, you gave up comfort, you gave up ease, you gave up indulgence. What you actually gain is far greater. You gain strength. You gain control. You gain the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. Every sacrifice is like depositing a coin into the vault of your character. It doesn't look like much at first, but over time, the wealth of discipline grows, and when life throws you into the storm, you'll discover that you've been building an inner fortress all along. Sacrifice also reveals what truly matters to you. When you give something up, you're not just denying yourself, you're affirming your priorities. You're declaring this goal, this vision, this future I'm building matters more than the temporary comfort I'm surrendering. And when you live that way, you begin to reorder your life around what is meaningful instead of what is easy. That shift is transformative because meaning, not comfort, is what ultimately sustains you. Of course, sacrifice is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. That's the point. Comfort doesn't build resilience, sacrifice does. When you resist the urge to indulge in something pleasurable in the short term, you develop the capacity to endure discomfort in the long term. You expand your threshold for difficulty, and that expansion becomes the core of your strength. You're no longer thrown off balance by every challenge or temptation because you've trained yourself moment by moment to embrace discomfort as the path to growth. Think about it like lifting weights. The growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable. It happens when the weight is heavy, when your muscles are burning, when every part of you wants to quit, but you refuse to stop. Sacrifice works the same way for your character. Each time you give up comfort, you're adding weight to your inner muscles. Each time you choose the harder road, you're strengthening your resolve. And just like with physical training, the pain you endure today becomes the strength you carry tomorrow. This is why you must start with the small sacrifices. Wake up earlier. Shut off the distractions. Delay gratification. Do the work when you don't feel like it. These little acts may not impress anyone, but they will transform you from the inside out. They are the training ground for your willpower, the practice arena for the greater battles you'll face. And when those greater battles come, and they always do, you'll be ready because you've already built the strength to endure them. So do not despise the small sacrifices. Do not overlook them or dismiss them as meaningless. They are the seeds from which discipline grows, and discipline is the root of every meaningful achievement in life. Each choice to give up what is easy in favor of what is necessary makes you stronger, tougher, and more capable of carrying the weight of your own existence. Embrace those sacrifices because in the end, they are not losses at all. They are the path to becoming the kind of person who cannot be broken, no matter how heavy the burden becomes. One of the biggest mistakes people make in the pursuit of discipline is believing that progress must always be dramatic, that every step forward has to be some massive leap. But the truth is, life doesn't work that way. Growth is often slow, deliberate, and almost invisible in the moment. The danger is that when progress feels small, people convince themselves it's not worth it. They stop, they give up, or they wait for the perfect moment to begin again. That's how momentum is lost. Discipline is not about perfection, it's about persistence, and persistence means you keep moving forward, no matter how small the step may seem. When you're tired, when you're discouraged, when you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world, it's easy to believe that one small effort won't make a difference. But it does. Every step matters because every step keeps you in motion, and motion is the lifeblood of discipline. Even the tiniest step forward is infinitely better than standing still, because standing still soon turns into sliding backward. If you can just take the next step, however small, you've proven to yourself that you are not broken, that you are not defeated, that you still have the strength to keep going. It's in the smallest victories that character is forged. Writing a single page, doing a single set, taking a single action, it might not feel like much, but it builds momentum, and momentum compounds. One step becomes two steps become 10, and before you know it, you've covered ground you once thought impossible. Discipline thrives on this compounding effect, and it rewards those who refuse to stop even when their progress seems insignificant. There will be days when all you can give is a fraction of what you hoped for. But if you give that fraction, you're still in the fight. And staying in the fight matters more than winning it all at once. Because as long as you are moving forward, you are not defeated. As long as you take the next step, no matter how small, you are still on the path. That is the essence of discipline. To refuse to stop, to refuse to surrender, to keep pressing forward inch by inch until the inches turn into miles. So never underestimate the power of small steps. They are the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Keep moving forward, especially when it's hard, and one day you'll look back and realize that those tiny steps were what built a life of unshakable strength. Discipline is not something that arrives fully formed. It is not a gift you wake up with one day, nor is it a trait reserved for the chosen few. It is forged piece by piece through choices you make daily, by setting clear, non-negotiable standards for yourself, by refusing to be ruled by fleeting emotions, by constructing routines that anchor your life, by embracing the pressure of accountability, by practicing the strength of small sacrifices, and by moving forward even when progress feels painfully slow. Each of these elements builds upon the other, layering discipline into the very fabric of who you are. What you must understand is that discipline is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about becoming someone who stands firm in a world that constantly tempts you to bend. It's about refusing the easy path so you can carve out a life of meaning, strength, and integrity. Every sacrifice, every moment of persistence, every act of structure and accountability is shaping you into a person capable of carrying the heavy burdens life will inevitably place on your shoulders. And that is the point of it all, not to make life easier, but to make you stronger. Because when you are strong, you can withstand the storms, you can rise above the chaos, and you can lead yourself and others towards something greater. So commit to the process, embrace the weight of discipline, and let it transform you into the person you know you are capable of becoming. The path will not be easy. It begins with looking in the mirror and acknowledging, without excuses, that your life is the product of your decisions, your habits, and your mindset. Most people shy away from this truth because it's uncomfortable. It's far easier to point fingers, to claim that the world or luck or other people are to blame for your stagnation. But here's the brutal truth: until you take full ownership of your life, no amount of advice, no strategy, no motivational speech will change a thing. Real transformation starts with you standing up, confronting yourself, and saying, I am responsible for everything I allow in my life, and I choose to change it now. Radical ownership doesn't mean assuming guilt for things outside your control. It means taking control over what is within your power. You can't change the past, and you can't force the world to conform to your wishes. But you can change how you act today. You can decide which habits to keep and which to break. You can choose who you allow to influence your thoughts, your energy, your focus. You can stop waiting for permission, for a sign, or for someone else to step aside and let you live the life you deserve. That's where true power lies, not in avoiding responsibility, but in embracing it fully. When you realize that your current situation, no matter how dire it feels, is a reflection of your choices up to this point, you stop feeling like a victim and start feeling like the architect of your future. That shift in perspective is revolutionary because it moves you from passivity to action, from complaint to solution, from fear to purpose. Many people stumble here because they equate ownership with self-punishment. But that's a misunderstanding. Taking responsibility isn't about beating yourself up for mistakes. It's about learning from them and refusing to repeat them. Every failure, every misstep, every regret is a signal, a lesson, a compass pointing you toward the changes that must be made. When you face your life with honesty, without sugarcoating or rationalizing, you start to see patterns. You see the choices that brought you joy and the choices that brought you pain. You see the moments where courage could have propelled you forward and the moments where avoidance kept you stagnant. By mapping these patterns, you gain clarity, and clarity is the precursor to change. You begin to understand that your life is not something that happens to you. It is something you actively shape with every thought, word, and action. Ownership also demands accountability, not just to yourself, but to the world you interact with. Your relationships, your work, your health, your finances, all of these are arenas where your responsibility manifests. If you want to change your life in one day, start by owning your role in every aspect of it. Speak the truth, act deliberately, and refuse to let excuses dictate your behavior. Stop blaming circumstances and start leveraging them. Turn setbacks into lessons, failures into data, and obstacles into stepping stones. The moment you accept this, you unlock a power that most people never tap into, the power to deliberately direct your life toward the outcomes you desire. So today, don't wait. Don't rationalize why you can't or postpone because conditions aren't perfect. Stand up, look yourself in the mirror, and own your life in its entirety. Take responsibility for the small decisions and the big ones, for your habits, your time, and the energy you bring into every interaction. In that ownership lies freedom. In that ownership lies transformation. And in that ownership lies the undeniable truth. The moment you stop blaming the world and start commanding your own life, everything changes and nothing will ever hold you back again. Most people live their lives in a state of constant distraction. They are juggling 100 small problems, worries, and frustrations, yet they never stop long enough to identify the one issue that is truly holding them back. If you want to fix your life in one day, you have to go deeper than surface level inconveniences. You have to strip away the noise, peel back the layers, and confront the core problem. The one thing that, if resolved, will create a ripple effect of transformation across every area of your existence. This is not a task for the faint-hearted. It requires brutal honesty with yourself. It requires the courage to sit in discomfort and face the truth that perhaps your life has gone off course because of one fundamental misalignment, one neglected area, or one belief that has been silently dictating your actions. Most people avoid this kind of self-examination because it is uncomfortable. It's easier to fix symptoms than the disease. But real change demands that you go straight to the source. Start by asking yourself questions you usually avoid. What is the one area of my life that consistently causes me the most pain, stress, or frustration? Where do I feel the most stuck, the most unfulfilled, the most anxious? Which of my habits, relationships, or patterns is sabotaging the potential that I know I possess? The answer may not be obvious at first. It may be buried beneath layers of avoidance. Rationalizations and excuses, but with patience and clarity it emerges. And once you identify it, everything else starts to fall into place. You can redirect your energy, your focus, and your action towards solving the problem that truly matters, instead of scattering yourself across 100 small tasks that offer temporary relief. You concentrate your power where it counts the most. The core problem is not always external. It is often internal. It could be a fear you refuse to confront, a limiting belief that has been silently controlling your decisions, or a pattern of behavior that has become second nature but is fundamentally destructive. People spend years complaining about the consequences of these issues: failed relationships, financial struggles, dissatisfaction, without ever realizing that the real source of their suffering lies within. Identifying the core problem is a form of liberation because it gives you a target. It allows you to stop being a passive observer of your life and start being an active participant in your transformation. It tells you where to put your energy, which choices to make first, and which distractions to eliminate entirely. Once you have pinpointed this central challenge, the next step is to confront it directly. Don't flinch. Don't rationalize it away. Break it down, understand why it exists, and ask yourself what actions you must take today to neutralize its power over you. Often, the solutions are deceptively simple, but simplicity does not mean easy. Facing the core problem will require courage, discipline, and unwavering commitment. But it is far more effective than spreading yourself thin on a dozen superficial fixes that never address the root cause of your struggles. Your life will only truly change when you remove the single obstacle that has been quietly undermining every other effort you've made. The beauty of this process is that once the core problem is exposed and addressed, everything else aligns. Your energy becomes focused, your decisions gain clarity, and your confidence grows because you can see real progress unfolding in front of you. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it deliberately. The chain of small victories that follows from solving the root issue creates momentum that propels you forward in ways you never imagined. And once momentum takes hold, transformation ceases to be an abstract idea. It becomes tangible, undeniable, and unstoppable. So take the time today to go deep. Ask the questions you have been avoiding. Confront the truth with honesty, courage, and precision. Identify the one problem that has been quietly dictating your life and then commit yourself to dismantling it piece by piece. Once you do this, you will realize a profound truth: the barriers to your success, your happiness, and your fulfillment were never outside of you. They were simply waiting for you to look clearly, focus sharply, and act decisively. Every one of us carries invisible weights. They're the people, habits, and environments that silently erode our energy, undermine our confidence, and derail our progress. If you want to fix your life in one day, you must recognize that the people and things you allow near you are not neutral. They either lift you up or drag you down. And the truth is brutal. The world is full of influences that are toxic, draining, and destructive, and if you don't remove them immediately, no amount of motivation, planning, or hard work will ever get you where you want to go. Eliminating toxic influences isn't about judgment or cruelty. It's about survival, clarity, and creating a life where your energy, focus, and potential can flourish without constant sabotage. Start by looking around you. Examine your relationships, the media you consume, the habits you allow yourself to indulge, and the environments in which you spend most of your time. Who leaves you feeling drained, anxious, or small after an interaction? Which habits keep you trapped in cycles of procrastination, self-doubt, or regret? Which parts of your environment, your home, your workspace, even your social media feeds, fill your mind with negativity rather than purpose? These are the influences that must be addressed immediately. Often, people hesitate because they fear conflict, discomfort, or loneliness. But here's the hard truth: if something or someone is poisoning your life, leaving it unchecked is not neutral, it's consent. Every day you tolerate it is another day it undermines your progress, your energy, and your capacity to grow. Toxic influences come in many forms. Some are obvious people who belittle you, discourage your dreams, or drag you into negativity. Others are more subtle habits of overconsumption, endless scrolling, gossip, or the constant need for approval. All of them erode your ability to act decisively, focus sharply, and create meaningful change. The moment you identify these influences, you must act. You don't negotiate with energy drainers. You remove them. You don't reason with habits that hold you back. You replace them. You don't tolerate environments that stifle you. You redesign them. It's not easy. It requires courage, decisiveness, and a willingness to prioritize your life above comfort. But the payoff is extraordinary freedom, clarity, and a surge of energy that allows you to take control of your life. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in a single day is to declutter your mental and emotional space. Call people who elevate you and set boundaries with those who don't. Remove distractions that keep you tethered to mediocrity. Choose information, experiences, and environments that challenge you to grow rather than numb you or pull you backward. Every decision you make about what you allow into your life either strengthens or weakens your trajectory. If you want transformation, you cannot leave this to chance. You cannot assume that people or circumstances will change to suit you. You must act decisively and immediately. It's important to understand that this process is not about anger or resentment. It's about clarity and self-respect. When you remove toxic influences, you are not punishing anyone. You are reclaiming your life. You are signaling to yourself that your time, energy, and potential are non-negotiable. And when you make this decision, something remarkable happens. You create space for growth, for creativity, for relationships, and for opportunities that align with the version of yourself you are striving to become. You stop being reactive to negativity and start being proactive toward purpose. This is a day of power, a day of decisive action, and the elimination of toxic influences is one of the most impactful steps you can take. It is the act that sets the stage for everything else: the clarity to identify your core problem, the energy to take radical action, and the freedom to focus on growth without interference. When you remove what drags you down, you make room for what lifts you up. You reclaim your energy, your time, and your future. So, today, do not wait. Examine your life ruthlessly. Identify the relationships, habits, and environments that are toxic and remove them without hesitation. Make space for clarity, energy, and focus. Make the decision to protect your life from those who would drain it, and commit to a life where your potential is not compromised by the weight of negativity. The moment you do this, you are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are the master of your own life, and everything that truly matters begins to flourish. Change without direction is like trying to sail a ship without a rudder. You may move, you may expend energy, but without a clear plan, you will never reach the destination you desire. If you want to fix your entire life in one day, you must not only act, but you must act with precision. You must create a crystal clear action plan, a roadmap that transforms overwhelming complexity into simple, deliberate steps. The difference between those who drift through life and those who transform it lies in clarity. Action without clarity leads to frustration, confusion, and wasted effort. Clarity, however, creates focus, confidence, and momentum. Today, you have the opportunity to create a plan so clear that every step you take propels you forward with unstoppable force. Start by defining the specific outcome you want to achieve. Don't be vague. Don't settle for abstract aspirations like, I want to be successful, or I want to be happy. Ask yourself, what does success look like in concrete terms? What will your day, your week, or your life look like once this problem is solved? Be precise. Write it down. When your goal is tangible, your mind can begin to map the route. The human brain thrives on clarity. It organizes effort, anticipates obstacles, and identifies resources when it has a clearly defined target. Without it, effort is scattered, intentions are diluted, and transformation remains elusive. Next, break down this goal into actionable steps. A mountain becomes climbable when it is divided into measurable, achievable increments. Identify the small tasks, the immediate actions, the first steps that you can take today. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't hope for inspiration to strike, and don't overcomplicate the process. Momentum is built in movement, and movement begins with action, no matter how small. Make each step non-negotiable. Treat it as an obligation to yourself, a contract between the person you are today and the person you intend to become. Prioritize ruthlessly. Life is full of distractions and time is limited. Identify which actions are most impactful, the tasks that will yield the greatest results in the shortest time, and tackle those first. This is not a matter of convenience. It is a matter of effectiveness. Often, people fill their days with busy work to avoid discomfort, but real transformation demands confronting the actions that matter most, even when they are difficult, even when they require sacrifice. Your action plan must be a blueprint of efficiency, a structure that channels your energy where it counts the most. Anticipate obstacles and plan for them. Life will always throw challenges in your path. By thinking ahead, you prepare yourself to act rather than react, to respond with strategy rather than panic. Consider what has stopped you before and identify the ways you will overcome similar barriers today. The mind that anticipates is a mind that commands its environment rather than being buffeted by it. Your plan should not be rigid, but it should be resilient. It should give you a path forward even when the unexpected arises. Commit to reviewing and refining your plan continuously. Clarity does not mean stagnation. As you take steps and gather data from your actions, adjust and improve. Identify what works, discard what does not, and double down on what produces results. This iterative process ensures that your plan is always aligned with your ultimate goal and that your momentum never stalls. Remember, transformation is not a one-time event. It is the accumulation of precise, deliberate actions carried out consistently and with purpose. Finally, tie every action to purpose. The most effective plans are not simply about doing, they are about doing with intent. When each step is connected to a meaningful outcome, motivation is no longer external. It is internal, unstoppable, and self-sustaining. Your plan becomes a compass guiding you through the chaos of life with precision, focus, and unyielding direction. So today, stop wandering in uncertainty. Define your goal, break it into concrete steps, prioritize ruthlessly, anticipate obstacles, and commit to acting with clarity and purpose. Let your action plan be your map, your guide, and your promise to yourself. The moment you take this step, you stop drifting through life and start deliberately shaping it. And there is nothing more powerful than the clarity of purposeful action in motion. Action is the bridge between intention and transformation. You can plan, you can visualize, you can write the perfect roadmap, but none of it matters if you do not commit to radical action without hesitation. Too many people wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, or the perfect alignment of stars. They tell themselves that tomorrow or next week, or when circumstances improve, they will finally take the step that will change everything. But here is the truth: the perfect moment does not exist. Life is imperfect, unpredictable, and often harsh. Waiting only prolongs mediocrity, anxiety, and frustration. To fix your entire life in one day, you must act now, decisively, boldly, and without hesitation. Radical action begins with courage. It is easy to talk about change, easy to imagine a better life, but it takes courage to move when fear is whispering, Stay where it's safe. Fear is a natural companion. It always accompanies meaningful growth. The difference between those who achieve and those who linger in dissatisfaction is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it. Courage is not an abstract virtue. It is a muscle strengthened through repeated acts of deliberate action. Each step you take today, each decision you make to act despite discomfort, reinforces your ability to confront the challenges of life with resolve. Another vital aspect of radical action is decisiveness. Indecision is a subtle form of self-sabotage. It convinces you that reflection is progress, that overthinking is preparation, and that hesitation is wisdom. But in reality, hesitation is inertia. Radical action is immediate, intentional, and relentless. Once you identify the action that must be taken, whether it is confronting a difficult truth, breaking a destructive habit, or pursuing a long-delayed goal, you move without delay. Momentum is built through the consistent accumulation of decisive acts. Each movement propels you further, strengthens your confidence, and expands the range of possibilities available to you. Execution without perfection is another critical element. Many people delay action because they believe they must act flawlessly. They fear mistakes, failure, or embarrassment. Yet perfection is an illusion, and waiting for it only guarantees stagnation. Radical action embraces imperfection, understanding that mistakes are not obstacles but information. Each step, each attempt, even if flawed, teaches you something essential. The key is to act decisively and adjust along the way. The process of moving forward creates learning, growth, and ultimately results. Waiting for perfect conditions only ensures that progress never arrives. Radical action also requires total commitment. Half-hearted efforts yield half-hearted results. You must act with full engagement, focus, and intensity. Commit not only your time, but your energy, attention, and resolve. Do not allow excuses, distractions, or self-doubt to erode your effort. Treat each action as non-negotiable, as if your future depends on it, because it does. The life you want is not given, it is earned step by step, decision by decision, act by act. Every moment you delay is a moment lost, a moment in which the potential for transformation is squandered. The transformative power of radical action is that it generates momentum that cannot be easily stopped. Action creates confidence, clarity, and energy. Once you begin to move decisively, the fog of indecision lifts. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable appear manageable. Fear loses its grip because you are engaged in doing, not ruminating. Your life begins to respond to your energy because you are no longer a passive observer. You are a deliberate creator, shaping reality through movement, effort, and choice. So today, do not overthink. Do not wait. Identify the first step, however small, and take it immediately. Pursue it with intensity, courage, and unwavering commitment. Accept that imperfection is inevitable, that fear will accompany you, and that discomfort is part of growth. Act decisively, relentlessly, and without hesitation, because transformation waits for no one. The moment you commit fully to action, the life you desire ceases to be a distant dream and becomes the reality you are actively constructing, and nothing will ever have the power to hold you back again. Your mind is the soil in which the life you want will either flourish or wither. If you want to fix your life in one day, taking action is essential, but lasting transformation requires more than action. It requires a fundamental shift in how you think. Most people live with automatic, unexamined patterns of thought that shape their behaviors without their awareness. They let fear, doubt, and limiting beliefs dictate their choices, and as a result, they remain trapped in cycles of frustration and stagnation. To create real change, you must intentionally rewire your mind, replacing old, destructive patterns with thoughts that empower, focus, and elevate you. Start by examining the beliefs that have held you back. Which ideas about yourself, others, or the world are limiting your potential? Are you clinging to fears of failure, inadequacy, or rejection? Are you constantly seeking approval or validation from others? These are the invisible chains that keep you from stepping fully into your power. By identifying these thoughts and confronting them honestly, you can begin to dismantle them. Replace them with beliefs rooted in possibility, responsibility, and growth. Tell yourself not just that change is possible, but that you are capable of creating it starting today. Visualization, reflection, and affirmation are powerful tools in this process. Picture the person you want to become, how they think, act, and respond to challenges. Reflect on the steps you are taking and the progress you are making, no matter how small. Affirm daily that you are committed to growth, action, and excellence. These practices are not fluff. They train your brain to focus on solutions rather than problems, to seek opportunity rather than comfort, and to act decisively rather than hesitate. Over time, they rewire your neural pathways, making empowerment, resilience, and clarity your default state of mind. Rewiring your mind is not instantaneous, but it is cumulative. Each decision to think differently, act with purpose, and refuse self-sabotage strengthens the foundation for long-term success. When your mind is aligned with your goals, every action, choice, and effort becomes more effective. You begin to attract opportunities, solve problems faster, and maintain the discipline necessary to sustain transformation beyond a single day. The truth is simple: your life will never rise above the quality of your thoughts. Rewire your mind and you unlock the power to live with clarity, confidence, and unstoppable momentum, creating a future that is no longer dictated by circumstance, but by your deliberate, empowered choice. Today you have the power to transform your entire life, not tomorrow, not next week, but today. You've learned that radical change begins with taking full ownership, confronting the core problem, and eliminating everything that drains your energy. You've seen the importance of creating a crystal clear plan, committing to decisive action without hesitation, and rewiring your mind for long-term success. These steps are not abstract ideas. They are practical, actionable principles that, when applied deliberately, have the power to reshape every aspect of your existence. Life will always present challenges, distractions, and obstacles, but the difference between a life of frustration and a life of fulfillment is the choice to act fully, courageously, and intentionally. The journey of transformation does not require perfection. It requires clarity, courage, and relentless commitment. One day of focused, purposeful action can ignite momentum that lasts a lifetime. When you take responsibility, confront your obstacles, remove toxic influences, act decisively, and cultivate a mind aligned with growth, you reclaim control over your life. You no longer wait for circumstances to change. You become the force that shapes your own destiny. The message is simple: as an unbearable punishment, the other as a chance to prove their resilience. The storm is the same, but the meaning they assign to it creates two entirely different lives. That's the essence of perception. You don't control the world outside you, but you control the story you tell yourself about what happens within it. When you begin to understand this, you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift in perception turns a tragedy into a teacher. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They lived in a brutal world, a world without the luxuries, protections, and conveniences we take for granted. Yet they managed to cultivate unshakable inner strength because they trained themselves to see every hardship as an opportunity to grow. The man who loses his wealth has the chance to discover the power of simplicity. The soldier who suffers defeat has the chance to learn humility and perseverance. Even death itself, the most feared of all realities, was seen not as something to curse, but as a reminder to live more fully while time is still in your hands. Think about how often negative thinking creeps into your life. You lose your job, and your first instinct is to believe you're worthless. Someone criticizes you, and you immediately think you're a failure. You face rejection, and you decide you're not good enough. But in all these situations, the event itself isn't destroying you, your perception is. A job loss can just as easily be the doorway to reinvention. Criticism can be an arrow pointing you toward areas of growth. Rejection can be the fire that forces you to become sharper, stronger, and more determined than ever. The obstacle is real, but your perception is the weapon that decides whether it cuts you down or sharpens you. You must begin to treat your perception like a muscle that requires training. Because left unchecked, the mind becomes lazy and defaults to negativity. It's easier to complain than to find meaning. It's easier to feel victimized than to accept responsibility for your reaction. But if you train yourself daily, if you pause in the middle of hardship and ask, what else could this mean? How can this make me stronger? You transform the entire nature of your suffering. You stop being a passive victim of life and become an active creator of meaning. That's where true strength emerges. There's an undeniable freedom in realizing that nobody can control your perception but you. They can take your possessions, they can insult you, they can betray you, they can abandon you, but they cannot dictate the way you interpret those experiences. That is your final fortress, the last territory that belongs only to you. And when you guard it with discipline and clarity, you become unbreakable. Negative thinking loses its power because you've replaced it with a deliberate, chosen perception that sees the world through the eyes of strength rather than weakness. So when life hands you pain, do not ask how to escape it. Ask how to see it differently. When you feel fear rising, do not run. Reframe it as the call to courage. When failure crushes you, do not let it whisper lies of inadequacy. See it instead as the hammer that forges resilience. Every situation in life bends to the power of perception, and it is in your grasp to turn even the darkest night into preparation for the dawn. The brutal law is this: perception determines reality. Control your perception, and you control your world. Fail to control it, and you'll drown in negativity of your own making. The choice is always yours, and if you choose to master the way you see, no obstacle, no failure, no tragedy will ever hold the power to destroy you. One of the greatest traps the human mind falls into is the illusion of control. We cling to outcomes, we demand certainty, we try to bend the world to our will, and when it doesn't comply, we spiral into despair, anger, or self-pity. The truth is that so much of life is beyond our reach. What people think of us, how they behave, what fate delivers at our doorstep. Yet we spend endless hours worrying, fretting, and exhausting ourselves over these uncontrollable forces. The Stoics taught a brutal but liberating truth. Freedom begins the moment you separate what is yours to command from what is not. Look at your daily life. You can't control whether someone will betray your trust, but you can control whether you choose bitterness or growth afterward. You can't control whether the economy rises or collapses, but you can control how you adapt, how you work, how you prepare. You can't control whether others love you, hate you, or misunderstand you, but you can control whether your character stays intact regardless of their opinion. Negative thinking thrives when we obsess over what lies outside our sphere of influence. It poisons the mind because you are fighting battles you can never win. But once you detach from the uncontrollable, you free up all that wasted energy to invest in what you can shape: your actions, your discipline, your mindset. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks that don't belong to you. Resentment, fear, regret, the craving for other people's approval, the desperate wish for life to be easier. Every step you take becomes harder, not because of the path itself, but because of the unnecessary weight you refuse to let go of. Detachment is not about apathy, it's about setting down the weight that was never yours to carry. It's about saying, this is beyond me. I will not waste my life wrestling with shadows. That act of surrender is not weakness, it's power, because it redirects your focus back to where it belongs, on the only domain you truly possess: your mind, your actions, your choices. The greatest strength is not found in controlling everything, but in controlling yourself when everything feels uncontrollable. Think about how often anger and frustration consume people, not because of what happened, but because they refuse to accept that it was outside their control. The traffic jam that ruins your day, the rude comment that lingers in your head, the weather that refuses to cooperate, these things hold power over you only if you grant them permission. The moment you detach, the moment you say, this isn't mine to control, they lose their grip. Peace replaces agitation. Focus replaces distraction. Strength replaces fragility. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care differently. You stop wasting energy on the impossible and pour yourself fully into the possible. You stop screaming at the wind and start adjusting your sails. The Stoics weren't emotionless statues. They were real men who faced wars, exile, poverty, and death. Their greatness came not from avoiding pain, but from refusing to hand their peace over to forces beyond their grasp. They knew that lives could rage on all around them, yet inside they could remain steady, grounded, and free. Ask yourself how much of your suffering is self-inflicted simply because you refuse to release control. How much of your anxiety is tied to the belief that if you just push harder, plan more, worry longer, you can bend fate to your desires. That is an illusion. And illusions are the breeding ground of endless negativity. But when you break that illusion, when you draw a hard line between what is yours and what is not, you liberate yourself. Suddenly, the world's chaos doesn't seem so overwhelming because you no longer feel obligated to manage it all. Life will test you. People will disappoint you. Outcomes will surprise you. Circumstances will betray your plans. But none of that has the power to break you unless you chain yourself to the uncontrollable. Detachment is the shield that protects your mind from drowning in negativity. It gives you the clarity to act where you can and the wisdom to release what you cannot. The brutal law is this: the more you cling to control over what is uncontrollable, the more life will crush you. The more you let go, the more unshakable you become. And in that release, you will discover a freedom so powerful that no chaos, no betrayal, no loss will ever enslave your mind again. Pain is inevitable. No one escapes it. Life will bring you loss, disappointment, rejection, and suffering, and there's no negotiation with that reality. The question is never whether you will face pain. The question is what you will do with it. Will you let it hollow you out, poison your spirit, and chain you to bitterness? Or will you transform it into fuel, into strength, into the very thing that forges you into someone unbreakable? That is the brutal law. Pain can destroy you, or it can build you. And the decision belongs to you. Think about the strongest people you know. Rarely are they people who have lived easy, comfortable lives. Strength is not born in comfort. It is born in struggle. It is shaped in the moments where life cuts you open and demands that you keep going anyway. The man who has never failed deeply, never been humiliated, never been broken, often remains fragile without realizing it. But the one who has been shattered by loss, who has been betrayed, who has been rejected and cast aside, yet stands up again, that person carries a strength that cannot be faked. Pain becomes their teacher, their sculptor, their forge. The Stoics understood this with ruthless clarity. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, lost children, faced betrayal, fought endless wars, and battled sickness. And yet, his writings reveal not despair but discipline, not weakness but wisdom. He turned his private agony into public strength, into words that continue to guide people centuries later. His pain became the soil in which his philosophy flourished. That is the choice you have before you. Will you curse your pain, or will you convert it? Will you see it as punishment, or will you use it as training? Pain has the ability to reveal parts of you that you never knew existed. When life is easy, you don't see how deep your strength runs. You don't test your endurance, your patience, your resilience. But when you're thrown into the fire, you discover that you are capable of more than you imagined. Every wound becomes proof that you survived. Every scar becomes a reminder that you endured. The pain that once made you tremble eventually becomes the very foundation of your confidence, because you know you've already walked through fire and emerged on the other side. Negative thinking thrives in the soil of pain. When you're hurt, it whispers to you that you're weak, that you're unlucky, that you're doomed. It tells you that life is against you and that you have no power. But the truth is the exact opposite. Your power is never greater than in those moments of suffering, because those are the moments that allow transformation. If you let pain crush you, you confirm the lie. But if you let pain shape you, you break it. You rise with a strength that no comfort could ever provide. There is a brutal kind of beauty in this process. Think of the blacksmith hammering iron. Each strike looks like violence, like destruction. But with every blow, the iron is being shaped, hardened, refined. Pain is the hammer of life. At first, it feels like you are being broken apart, but if you stay with it, if you endure, you realize you are being forged into something stronger, something sharper, something unyielding. Without the hammer, the iron remains raw and weak. Without pain, you remain untested and fragile. The truth is, pain will come for you regardless. You cannot escape it. But you can choose your relationship with it. You can choose to see it not as your enemy, but as your greatest ally in building resilience. You can choose to let it wake you up, sharpen your focus, and deepen your strength of character. And when you do, you stop fearing pain. You stop dreading the next challenge, the next hardship, the next wound, because you know it is just another opportunity to become stronger. So when life breaks you down, don't curse the breaking. Look for the strength it is pulling out of you. When suffering knocks you to your knees, don't believe it's the end. Recognize it as the beginning of transformation. When pain comes, let it burn away your weakness and reveal the steel beneath. The brutal law is this: pain will either bury you or it will build you into something unstoppable. If you decide to turn pain into strength, then no wound, no rejection, no failure will ever have the power to define you again. The battle for your mind is not fought only against the outside world. It's fought within. Your desires, your impulses, your emotions, they are powerful forces, and if left undisciplined, they can enslave you. Negative thinking doesn't always begin with external events. Often it's born from an undisciplined inner life. You want something desperately, you don't get it, and suddenly your mind spirals into frustration and bitterness. You feel anger rising, and instead of taming it, you unleash it. And it poisons not only your relationships, but also your peace of mind. You crave pleasure, comfort, distraction, and when you can't have them, you fall into despair. The truth is, the mind that is a slave to its desires and emotions cannot ever be free. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't tell people to kill their emotions or to stop wanting altogether. That's not possible. What they demanded was discipline, mastery. Emotions in themselves aren't evil. Desire isn't the problem. The problem is when they control you instead of you controlling them. If anger directs your choices, you'll destroy what you love most. If fear governs your steps, you'll never walk into the life you're capable of living. If pleasure becomes your compass, you'll trade long-term strength for short-term comfort, and you'll never discover your true potential. But if you can discipline these forces, if you can master them, then you will have unlocked one of the deepest sources of freedom and resilience available to the human soul. Think about what happens when you give in to every impulse. You become a servant to your moods. You wake up tired and you don't act. You feel anxious, so you avoid. You get angry and you lash out. You want comfort, so you neglect discipline. Before long, your life is not being lived by you. It is being dictated by the whims of your emotions. And then you wonder why you feel powerless, why negativity drowns you. It's because you've handed over control to forces that were never meant to rule you. But discipline changes everything. Discipline doesn't erase desire, it orders it. Discipline doesn't kill emotion, it channels it. Anger, for example, can become destructive rage, or it can become fuel to confront injustice and push through difficulty. Fear can paralyze you, or it can sharpen your awareness and prepare you for challenges. Even desire itself can either enslave you in addiction or inspire you to pursue greatness. The difference lies in whether you are the master or the servant. Discipline ensures that you sit in the seat of command, not your emotions. There is a reason the Stoics constantly reminded themselves of death, of hardship, of life's fragility. They knew that unchecked desires pull people into chasing what is trivial, while disciplined desires focus on what truly matters. If you are ruled by comfort, you will avoid growth. If you are ruled by pleasure, you will waste your life. If you are ruled by pride, you will crumble at the first insult. But if you discipline yourself to desire wisdom, courage, strength, and integrity above all else, then even when pain comes, even when loss strikes, even when life cuts deep, you remain anchored. Ask yourself, how much of your negativity comes from failing to discipline your inner world? How many times have you been overwhelmed? Not because of the event itself, but because of the way your emotions hijacked your response. The truth is, the man who masters himself has nothing to fear. The storms of life may rage, but inside, he remains steady. He doesn't deny his emotions, but he refuses to bow to them. He feels deeply, but he acts with clarity. He desires strongly, but he pursues only what strengthens, never what weakens. That's the kind of discipline you must cultivate if you want to kill negative thinking at its root. Because once you discipline your emotions, negativity no longer has a fertile ground to grow in. It starves because the mind is no longer a slave to impulses. It has become a fortress guarded by reason and self-command. The brutal law is this: if you cannot discipline your desires and emotions, they will discipline you. They will chain you, break you, and scatter your life into pieces. But if you learn mastery over them, if you rise above impulse and demand of your self-control, then you will walk through life with an inner strength that no negativity, no temptation, and no storm will ever have the power to shatter. One of the most corrosive forces to the human spirit is the endless pursuit of external approval. From the time we are young, we are trained to measure our worth by the reactions of others, whether it's grades in school, praise from parents, recognition from peers, or later in life, money, status, and the applause of society. The problem is that external approval is fickle. It shifts like the wind. One day people admire you, the next day they tear you down. If your self-worth is chained to their opinions, then you will forever live as their prisoner. The Stoics were ruthless in their rejection of this dependence. They understood that the only approval that truly matters is the approval you grant yourself, rooted in living by inner standards of virtue, strength, and integrity. Think about how fragile life becomes when you chase validation. You walk into a room and wonder, do they like me? Do they respect me? Do they think I'm successful? Every interaction becomes a test. Every silence becomes a judgment. That kind of life is exhausting, and it breeds constant negative thinking, because no matter what you achieve, no matter how much you're praised, you are always one criticism, one rejection, one failure away from crumbling. If your worth is based on external approval, then it is never secure. It can be ripped away in a moment. But when you live by inner standards, everything changes. You stop asking, what do they think of me? And you start asking, what do I think of myself? Did I act with courage? Did I act with honesty? Did I stay true to my values? That shift makes you untouchable, because your worth is no longer in the hands of others. It's rooted in principles that no insult, no rejection, no criticism can erase. You may lose wealth, you may lose status, you may lose popularity, but you will never lose yourself. And that is a far greater treasure than the shallow praise of the crowd. The Stoics understood the danger of applause. They knew that men who chase the approval of others become hollow, bending and twisting themselves to fit expectations, while their soul rots with weakness. True strength is to live aligned with your own inner compass, even if it means standing alone. It is to wake up each day and know that your actions are guided by something unshakable, not by the shifting tides of opinion. That is the path to freedom, and that is how you kill the endless cycle of negative thinking that comes from insecurity and comparison. Of course, this is not easy. We are social creatures. We crave acceptance, we crave belonging. But there is a difference between valuing connection and being enslaved to approval. To live by inner standards means you refuse to sell your soul for applause. It means you can listen to advice, you can accept feedback, but ultimately, your allegiance is not to the crowd. It is to the truth as you see it, to the principles you have chosen to live by. That is why the Stoics could face exile, imprisonment, even death, and still remain unbroken. Their worth wasn't tethered to circumstance or opinion. It was rooted in the integrity of their choices. Ask yourself how much of your anxiety comes from worrying about what others think of you. How many of your decisions are made not because they're right, but because you fear judgment or crave validation. That is no way to live. That is a slow death of the soul. But the moment you shift, the moment you say, I will judge myself by my standards, not theirs, you reclaim your freedom. You discover that negativity loses its grip because it no longer matters what voices rise against you. You stand firm in who you are. This is the brutal law. Live by the standards within, not the applause without. Because the applause will fade, the crowd will turn, the approval will vanish. But the self that is forged by integrity, discipline, and strength, that self cannot be taken from you. Build your worth on that foundation, and you will carry a fortress inside you that no rejection, no insult, and no shifting opinion will ever have the power to shake. Life is not obligated to unfold the way you want it to. It doesn't bend to your preferences, it doesn't pause for your convenience, and it certainly doesn't grant you immunity from suffering. The harder you fight against this truth, the more negativity festers in your mind. Most people live in a state of resistance. They resent their past, they despise their present, and they fear their future. That constant war with reality drains them of the very energy they need to change their lives. The Stoics taught something far more liberating: accept reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This isn't about passivity, it's about clarity. Radical acceptance doesn't mean you stop striving. It means you stop wasting your life arguing with what already exists. Think of the weight lifted when you stop saying, it shouldn't be this way, and instead ask, what can I do now that it is this way? Acceptance is the beginning of power, because only when you see things clearly can you act effectively. To deny reality is to blind yourself, but to accept it is to position yourself for transformation. A broken relationship, a failed attempt, a painful loss, these are not punishments, they are facts. Once accepted, they can become lessons, stepping stones, even opportunities for growth. But if you refuse to accept them, they remain chains that keep you trapped in negativity. This doesn't mean you must enjoy suffering or agree with injustice. It means you must face reality head on, refusing to let denial or resentment rot your spirit. When you practice radical acceptance, life no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a terrain to navigate with wisdom and strength. The brutal law is this: reality always wins. You can resist it and remain broken, or you can accept it and rise. And the moment you accept life as it is, you gain the strength to shape it into what it can become. At the heart of all these laws lies a single truth: your mind is either your greatest enemy or your greatest ally. Life will never stop testing you. Pain will come, people will fail you, circumstances will spiral beyond your control, and reality will often look far harsher than you wished it to be. But none of that has the power to destroy you unless you hand it the keys to your inner world. The Stoics understood that the real battlefield is not the external chaos, but the interpretations, the desires, the impulses, and the choices that rise within you. When you master perception, detach from what you cannot control, turn pain into strength, discipline your inner life, live by standards that are unshakable, and radically accept reality as it stands, you become unbreakable. Negative thinking cannot survive in a mind that has chosen discipline over chaos, truth over illusion, strength over weakness. The brutal laws are not meant to make life easier. They are meant to make you stronger, so no matter what comes, you stand as